Right, we are on catch-up time yet again, but with a difference this time. What we want to do is, instead of just babbling off all the many matches that we might have fished over the month, is that we're going to pick definitely a couple, 2 or 3 at least each month, what we're going to try and do, and elaborate on those matches and just go a bit technical for you, just so you're getting a little bit of info, knowledge, learning a little bit about what we've done, instead of us just babbling off numbers of what we've caught on the day. So just try and go a little bit more in depth on these things. And for the first one, I'm going to talk about something a little bit special that happened to me on a very, very small little match that I went to fish up at a local by mine called Yew Tree Fishery. And randomly, it was 2 days after Fishermania, and they had an evening match on. And I thought, I've never fished an evening match there. It's always going to be good with some edge fishing. And after Fisho, I really, really, really needed to go and catch some fish. So I nipped up there for a quick 3-hour evening match. And for lack of better words, it was ridiculous. Yeah, it's a venue I've fished a lot. I've been there many, many times and fished the normal 6-hour day matches. And it's always a lovely civilized venue, in that you need sort of 100 to 120, I suppose, is the steady weight. I mean, my mate Alan had recently broke record there with 206, I think. But do you know what I mean? It was a lovely civilized fishery, mostly carp, a lot of big skimmers, but just nice. But it never had evening matches on until this year, when it started having a few. And of course, with it being carp, they like eating in the evening, very much similar to myself. And it became a ridiculous edge fishing match. I fished down the edge from start to finish and weighed 336 pounds in 3 hours, which I think that was around 70 odd carp. But it was just stupid. And it was a phenomenal day's fishing where everything was perfect. But what I want to go on, or what I want to elaborate on my little make-believe peg that we're going to have going down here, is why things were so perfect. And I believe that the edge was right, the way I fed, and it got me thinking a lot about margin fishing. And that's happened lots and lots this year. It's been quite an edgy year for me, in that we have been fishing down the edge quite a lot. And it's really, really got me thinking about what the important things are. I mean, how to drag the fish in, what you're trying to achieve when you drag them in, and the different ways of feeding, just to make sure you get clean bites. Ultimately, that's what it comes down to. When you're fishing down an edge, so it'd be the same across on a snake lake perhaps, but I'm going to focus on carpy edge fishing, is the key thing. They can be very, very easy to get in the edge, carp can, but it is getting clean bites that can be the hardest thing. It's without doubt probably the most regular question that I ask is, why are there so many tails down the edge and I can't catch fish? It's just simply down to poor feeding and no focus point sort of thing. I'll elaborate on that in a minute. But that is what we're going to do now, is go through exactly what I think makes me get a lot more bites down the edge, because I'm able to concentrate my fish. So we'll bobble over to my little make-believe peg and I'll show you exactly what I mean. So we're at my little make-believe peg, and what we got here is pretty much the perfect scenario that I'm after. Yeah, it's a solid bank, which this is going to be. It's my little tiny brick wall that Andy's built for us. And then obviously the bottom of the lake. Yeah, so I love that solid face. Obviously, perfect scenario this. We've not always got that. It's often undercut, it's often a bit deeper, whatever else. But this is still going to allow me to show the basic principles of what I'm after. So what are we going to do with first? It's probably getting them in your pegs the hardest thing when it comes to fishing down the edge. And in a perfect world, I'd rather watch for someone to feed and then introduce a very small tight pile. I mean, that's the perfect world, and then I can keep introducing that small tight pile for every fish, keep it a nice carried on thing. Often is you need to put a big pot in to get them there. You need to introduce a little bit of bait to get them there, and that is what I'm going to do to start with, just to show what the big pot creates. So I've got my loose pot of ground bait, and I'm just going to feed a big pot of ground bait. Do you mean just like we would, nice over-wetted ground bait, we'd put that in, and what you'd find that happen is it'll spread quite a bit. So even though it looks good, yeah, when it reaches the bottom on a good day, it's still going to be in a good hard pile. What are you going to give me? 10-inch square, maybe a bit wider. That if your hook bait's in the middle of that, I had some hook baits, I don't know what I did with them. Don't know, we've lost them. But if your hook bait, single hook bait was in the middle of that now, it's still a big old area for them fish to be able to find it. Let me save me pot for it sinks rich. Yeah, it's a big old area for the fish to be able to find it. So you're not going to get a quick bite. You're going to end up with that tails wafted about. And obviously when a fish has been in your peg, that very quickly happens. And you end up with little bits all over the place. And there is no condensed focus point for the fish to eat on. So you'll have plenty of fish in your peg, tails all over the place, which looks brilliant, but it can be very, very difficult to get a bite because they're all over the place. They're facing in so many different ways because that bait's all over the place. And the more you introduce into your peg, the worse it gets, because that just spreads more and more and more, and you end up with, you know what I mean, with a second pot, you end up with all this all of a sudden, which is a hell of a big area to be, I mean, it's like needle in a haystack, to be able to find that fish to pick up your single hook bait. Obviously, you've got the option of big standout hook baits, which can be great. I mean, big double dendy bendy, double whatever, else, big hook baits can definitely score. And the reason that they score is because they can be slightly picked out in the area of the chaos and have your big pot in. What I'd much rather do, however, is get them in my peg with a big pot if needed. I mean, if I need to feed it earlier to get something happening in my peg. But once the initial chaos has occurred, so you let them come into your peg, let them waft all this about, let them eat most of it, so you just end up with a tiny bit of taste in the water. There's not bait spread all over the place. Then condense them, then start fishing and feeding a different way. And that's what I'm gonna show you how to achieve next time, is that by using my micros, so my preferred feed 100% of the time down the edge, if I'm allowed, depending on fisheries, is 50-50 micros and ground bait, because I can make it a lovely stodgy mix. Yeah, I used to use just micros, but I think it was at Mescar a couple of years ago that I was fishing up to a pallet, and the bloke opposite next to me was fishing up to the same pallet. He fed ground bait, I fed micros, and the fish definitely went to his more, because they want a bit of a smell. So by combining 50-50, for me, ultimate confidence mix, that's what we go for. And what I want to do is, these are already softened. So I've softened them up, they're soft but dry. You've seen me do this many, many times before. So they're ready done pellets, but I want to spoil them. Because if I fed them how they are at the minute, what you find is that with softened micros, they like mushroom, and they don't end up nice and tight on the bottom. You could feed them in a ball, which would make them sink tight, but once you feed them in a ball, they could roll, they could move about. Just not as perfect as they could be, so I can do it better. So what I'm going to do is take a big handful of them, chuck them in a bait tub, mess that ball up, and what I'm going to do is nearly ruin them with water. So I'll put a big glug of water on them, so that, I mean, you can see there's a lot of water in there, and mess them up, like right mess them up, so they go claggy, messy, horrible, I mean sloppy, mushy pellets. And then to make that happen even more, just add a bit more water, is a big handful of ground bait on top of them. Yeah, just by mixing that ground bait, so I've still got all the lovely particles of the micros softening, like splitting themselves up, but I end up with that lovely claggy, pasty mess. Yeah, which looks absolutely horrendous, but what it's perfect for is what I'm going to show you with me, my little pot on the scourger now, is that when I feed that, I don't have to feed it in a tight ball, I can just feed it in a nice clump. So I can fill my pole pot with it, just make sure them edges leave the pole pot, and then when I put it in, I tap that in, you see it goes down like a bleh, and it's not a ball that's going to roll, it's just it's a lump of slop pretty much, but it gets to the bottom nice and tight where Rich is zooming in on, and breaks down really, really quickly. And as long as I'm accurate, I've got my markers, got whatever else, I can put my rig really, really perfectly over the top of that. And the key is to get your rig over that as soon as you've introduced it. Get your rig over it within a millisecond if you can. You make nice positive rig that swing it out, swing it straight back in so it's right over the top of your bait with your cherry on top sort of thing, with your hook, your corn, hook bait, whatever else. And it's all focused. So you've got that focus of volume of bait, that if there's any carp in your peg, that's in one. You know, I've seen it before on the Matrix underwater ones that we've done. There is no messing about with that pile. It is annihilated the second the fish comes into the peg, because it's a focus point. Yeah, it's the one big gobful that the fish can go to. They can get a worthwhile mouthful without having to scatter about on all this, the loose fed stuff all over the place, where they don't get a lot of effort. Instead, they can have that big pile, eat it, and you're away. Yeah, really, really clean as well. You get lovely bites, because I believe that the fish eat the pile and your bait in one go. They just come, take the lot, and you get nice clean bites, and you avoid the foul lookers as well, because you've got that focus point again. They're always coming tight to the bank, straight onto the focus point. It prevents me liners as long as my rig's in place before the fish get into your peg. So that'll be another big tip that I give you, is that if there's fish present, often it's worth just putting your rig in. Yeah, wait till they spook off, or wait till they just move off and you can't quite see them on the area, then put your pile in and get your rig over the top of it. So if you put a pile in when a rig's there, it can often, when a fish is there, it can often mess it about a little bit. That's the last thing you want. What it's all about for me is creating that one little pile every go. Fish comes in, eats the lot, I catch the fish, next cast, I do the same again, and we can carry on with that process while the fish are coming into the peg. And then it can be a simple case of, when they stop coming in, give them another big pot, let them spread it about, let them eat it, let them deplete it all over the place, then start your pile again. It's a lovely process that makes it really, really easy to get clean bites instead of having them horrible tails all over the place and you foul look them, and it's just a very, very frustrating day. So hopefully that'll fix things a little bit for you.